stay with us as we welcome Wayne Popping to the stage for a live Q&A with the producer-director. Come on. Really, a round of applause to you, Wayne. That was really something very, very, very special. Wayne, I gotta tell you, that was, gut-wrenching. But I have to say that, for myself, to experience your take on anti-Semitism as something which is not exclusively dark, but actually has some very powerful light hidden within it in the most strangest of ways. I couldn't help but notice how in your very compelling argument in the video, identifying the roots of hatred within Hitler, as you declared that anti-Semitism is the war between evil against good, as you declared that the attacks, the massacres of October 7th is essentially an attack against our values in Torah and in mitzvahs. And that's why it's so obvious to me that they, the aggressors, called this war the Al-Aqsa flood. Al-Aqsa, of course, being a reference to Jerusalem. Because this is not a war about the south of Israel. It's not a war about the kibbutzim. It's not a war about land. This is a war about Jerusalem. This is a war about the Temple Mount. They know what they're fighting for. Sadly, we have no clue what we are fighting for. Tell us about this experience, this discovery of yours. It's incredible.
First of all, I should say that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Even in our team, they are giants. The film is based on Raphael Shaw's book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew, but he was writing about this, and he made other PowerPoint presentations about these ideas 20 years ago, as you mentioned with Relentless, that just lit a fire inside of me and lit up these ideas. And Rav Shalom Schwartz, the centrality of the Ten Commandments. Before we started making the film, he spoke about the Ten Commandments. Rabbi Schwartz, it was his idea to do the film, and he raised the first funds, and his organization is called Aseret. It's about the Ten Commandments, and we were wondering, how are we going to stop in the Ten Commandments? We don't really, how do they actually tie in? But as we thought about it and worked through it, and you actually hit the nail on the head. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, Karen yesterday actually, we made a film called Kids Chasing Paradise about, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, about ISIS and about the radicalization of children, and Hamas, and there was an Israeli man who was murdered on a bus, and his son, we were in New York City filming him, and he was saying to us in this interview, he said, there's such a thing in this world as good, and there's such a thing in this world as evil. And he was speaking about good and evil. And I remember filming him, looking through the viewfinder, and he was speaking about good and evil, and I said, this guy is so right, but there's no way I could use this in the film. Because good, who's to say what's good and who's to say what's evil, right, in our morally relativistic world. This is the first film that we've made, we could actually use the words good and evil, because on October 7th, that line between good and evil became so clear, and their mask just was ripped right off. And now we have a nomenclature. Who's a good person? Who's a bad person? So it comes down to the Ten Commandments, as strange as it sounds. It doesn't mean that a person has to do all 10 and believe in all 10, but a person who's striving to do that, he's a good person, or that's a good country. Or a person or a country that's against those 10, they're evil by definition. So they're helping us. Is this tequila?
And we provided if you need it.
Yeah, put some vodka in it.
After that film, let me tell you, we could use some l'chaim.
We did it l'chaim. So it's good and evil. The terrible thing about anti-Semitism is obviously that it's terrible. But the upside, if you can call it that, is that we wouldn't be having this conversation likely about what's a Jew, what's good, what's evil with many people, not just the people in this room. Maybe we would with the people in this room, but with other people if it wasn't for anti-Semitism. And we'll speak more about that, but there's this particular purpose for it. And to be able to at least have this conversation in 2025 for the first time is liberating for every single one of us.
I gotta say that it's so refreshing to be able to watch the very special and professional way in which you presented your arguments and your position in the film. Because the one thing about anti-Semitism, the one thing about anti-Semites which seems so clear, is that anti-Semites never fail to fail. It's quite amazing. Anti-Semites never ever fail to fail. And what's amazing about them is that they never fail to try again. They keep on trying. So I think that there's a tremendous sense of strength that we can find in once we understand why it is that they hate us. They hate us because Hashem chose us. They hate us because we're the chosen people. That one point that we can extract from that is that we've got God on our side. There's no way we're losing this war. Now it might be bloody, it might be painful beyond words, not anything we'd ever want to sign up for. But one thing we can know for sure is that come what may, we will always outlive those who try to destroy us. And I think that gives us a tremendous amount of strength.
You can bring a proof, a raya, from the book of Rocky Balboa. The good guys always win. And so we think, oh, that's just, fairy tales or fiction. The good guys have to win by definition. If you look, I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I know enough to know there were the hobbits in the green area. Everything was green and flowers, and then there was Sauron or something in Mordor, right? Everything was black and dark, and the orcs. It's Sauron, right? If Sauron won, if the bad guys won, how long could they actually live like that? How long can evil actually live? Because evil doesn't give birth to anything, doesn't give birth to life. So evil by definition will die out. Where goodness, like the hobbits of Hobbiton, it's green, it's lush, and they're cute, and you have life over there. Rabbi Ken Spiro's got this t-shirt. I love this t-shirt. I should have brought a thing you can put on the screen. It says like this. It's got a list of all the people that have tried to kill the Jews. It says like the Egyptians, and then it says gone. And then it says the Phoenicians, gone. The Romans, gone. The Babylonians, gone. The Byzantines, gone. And it goes on and on and on and on. Gone, 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 gone. And then it says Iran, question mark, Hamas, question mark.
In process.
In process. And then underneath he says, be nice. Be nice. Because if you're not going to be nice, you're not going to be around for a long time. Exactly what you were saying. And I'll just add one more thing. Someone showed me the other day in Netziv, who's a famous commentator, last century, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago, I think the Netziv was writing. And I saw something, I actually had to look at it twice, because it was very perplexing. So we just celebrated the Seder, and at the Seder we say, in every generation they rise up to kill us, right? And Hashem saved us from their hands. So he reads it a little bit differently. He says that anti-Semitism is the reason that we're still around. He says that's why we are here. In every generation, he's going to put someone in every single generation to try and kill us. But Hashem is going to save us from their hands. Meaning, it's not like an accident, it's not like something that happens, it's part of the fabric of it. And so it's not a bug, it's a feature. That's what he was saying, he didn't use those words. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And so if this is the mechanism, it behooves us to actually understand how the mechanism works, because anti-Semitism, he explains, is not necessarily a punishment. It could be, but it's not necessarily. Anti-Semitism is a way for Jews to actually realize that they're Jewish. and to remember that they had a mission. And when we lose sight of that, we lose track of that, he sends our friends to remind us. And it's not always very pleasant.
That's an incredibly spiritual approach, one which is very challenging, but I'm not sure if we have any other options really in terms of how we are able to approach anti-Semitism. When you look at Jewish history, if you read the book of the prophets, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, and you read the Torah, you see that all of Jewish history is about this wave where Jewish people have risen to great faith, and then comes with that great peace and security and serenity and wealth. But then avarice rises, they descend into the pits of indifference and apathy, and as their faith disintegrates, an enemy comes out of nowhere and forces them, their backs against the wall, to rediscover their faith, and they rise all the way up again until they become secure. They don't need God anymore, and they fall right back down again. It's like a yo-yo. This is the story of Jewish history. I mean, it's an inconvenient truth. But if you look at the story of Jewish history, that's actually what's happening. And I believe that you certainly alluded to that in the film when you said near the end that anti-Semitism reminds us of who we are. And you actually alluded to the fact that God created anti-Semitism as a tool to keep us Jewish. I know this is not an easy pill to swallow, folks. Not an easy pill to swallow. We'll open it up to questions in just a moment. But certainly it doesn't absolve the aggressors. And those who instigate anti-Semitism will certainly be held accountable in courts of law on earth and in court of law of heaven. However, as Jews, as believers, we must be able to discover the deeper reason behind it. And as the Jews of 2025, as the Jews of post-October 7th, perhaps this is our time to close that circle, which is the inevitable cycle of Jewish history. And now it is our time, as we saw in those videos. We have never seen such Jewish unity since October 7th. We have never seen Jews come together, embracing each other and embracing their faith as we've seen after October 7th. And now is our time to rise up to the occasion. I'm proud to tell you, Wayne, that in our community there are scores of men that have taken upon themselves, some of them are in this room right now, taking upon themselves to lay tefillin every single day. These are men that never dreamed that they would do this. There are women lighting Shabbos candles. There are men, women, and children that are increasing their Jewish observance like never before. We are seeing an awakening, as the title of your film. It's tragic, but it is an awakening indeed. An awakening of the Jewish soul, because they attacked us for being Jewish, and we are not running away from being Jewish. We're doubling down, and we're not intimidated. We are strong. Let's open it up to questions from anybody here. Please, I know there's many questions coming around. I'll start off with Al, please.
I'd start by asking, have you shown this film at Reformed and conservative synagogues?
Can everybody get
I'm going to repeat the question. Have you shown this film at Reform and conservative synagogues?
No, but we'd love to.
We are ready.
You have to.
We'd love to.
We have. You're on the board of the conservative temple, you're not? Okay, we have another one right here.
Because they never asked us before we went into the gas chambers, which temple did you go to, which minyan did you
Which
go to?
affiliation?
Yeah, you put tefillin on, you didn't put tefillin on.
Nobody should be asking, and you should be showing it in every college and every high school and every elementary school. I
We've
think.
got to get it on Netflix.
So that's why we're here tonight.
It was
So,
on television last night.
Oh, it was?
what's that?
This film was on television last night.
On Newsmax? Where did you see it? Yeah, it's on
You
Newsmax.
saw this last night on television? This film?
The whole
You know that?
film?
Yeah, it's on Newsmax.
Oh, okay.
We're working on the big distribution plan, but to answer your question, we want to and we need to. And so you'll help us make that happen. We try to make a film. We set ourselves a goal. We wanted to make a film that a Jew who's Reformed, secular, atheist, or Orthodox, or ultra-Orthodox, or a person that's not Jewish, Christian, not Christian, atheist, whatever, everyone should be able to watch this movie and not freak out too much. Right? Everyone can freak out a little bit, but not too much. Our other films, everybody freaks out like a lot. But this film, we wanted to make it that if you're on this, if you're a good person, or if you're trying to be good, in other words, if you're aligning with those 10 principles that we spoke about, the 10 commandments, nothing in here, you shouldn't find too much in here objectionable. But if you're not a good person, or if you're not trying to do good in the world, you'll find a lot wrong with this film. So it's kind of like a litmus test, and I have no doubt that we'll have very interesting conversations, and I would look forward to screening it there and everywhere.
Like that amazing quote from Vasily Grossman, tell me what you accuse the Jews of, and I'll tell you what you are guilty of. Mickey.
Is the film available on Netflix, Prime, YouTube?
Not yet, but we're working on it.
I want to send the link to my kids, and more importantly, to my grandkids to watch, to understand who watched.
Mickey's asking if the film is available anywhere online, and the answer is?
Not yet, but soon. Soon. The reason that we're not making it widely available yet is because when we do get a distributor, if it is too widely available, they won't want to pick it up. So we're in like a bit of a catch-22.
Can we upload it to the Chabad YouTube?
Soon.
You'll let me know when?
And you'll do a reaction video.
Absolutely, we'll have 50,000 subscribers, right? Okay. Yes, Andy. Andy, go ahead.
How did you get the sense of mapping out the script? And I'm asking this because this is the most perfectly timed, not blabbing, not just go straight down to the point. And how did you get the map to make up?
The question is asked by Andy is how Wayne was able to map out the script, which was so perfectly timed and executed. I think I know the answer to that because Wayne, is a master, but I'll let him answer the question.
I think it was Ernest Hemingway who said something to the effect of, writing is easy, you just sit at the typewriter and open a vein.
Wow, I like that.
It's, on one hand, it was just hours and hours and hours of working through, but on the other hand, and I don't want to make this sound too romantic, but we had so much siyata d'shmaya on this project. We had so much, first of all, the
Divine intervention.
Isn't Rowan incredible? That woman?
Yeah. What a personality. Whew. She's going to bring her to Chabad.
She is so powerful.
Hannah told me she's planning on bringing her.
Good. Not only is she so powerful, but the chemistry that Rowan had with the rabbis and the way that they approached this topic. I said to the rabbis afterwards, because they're also the producers, I was like, you guys, I love you guys, but you've given me a big problem, and that is you've given me way too much material to work with, because
53 minutes.
There was just too much good stuff. So that comes to your question. A mentor of mine and of Jody's, his name was Jeff Corey, and he had a saying, NBBBE, never be boring, be entertaining. And so that was the overriding principle. And then the second thing was, coming back to the previous answer, I had in mind someone who, if it was getting too religious, I needed to pull it back so that a non-Jew or someone who's not religious wouldn't. And so there was this push and pull. So this goal that we'd set ourselves kind of like made guardrails, and that guided us through. And then also we had the thesis of Rabbi Shor's book. And I'll just say the one section that we had no idea about how to bring in our original overview was the Mufti section. The Mufti and Hitler. Because it's such an outlier and it's such a difficult subject to broach, and it took a long time of trial and error till the one day I was going through a lot of material. I found this quote from Melanie Phillips, who spoke about the Mufti, and she spoke about Mahmoud Abbas, and I was like, okay, that's the spine. And then we were able to weave it in. But it was trial and error and unbelievable siyata d'shmaya, and we had to get this thing out fast. We were supposed to get it out by July. We ended up getting it out like in October. December actually. So I was already like months behind for this artificial deadline we'd given ourselves. So
well, it seemed just perfect, and everything was.
So thank you.
It was a reminder of this morning's speech by the rabbi, or the teaching of how we go from Tohu to Tikva. It was like you had the path directly.
This was a masterpiece, really a masterpiece in terms of presentation. Absolutely spectacular. Russell.
At first, I want to congratulate you on an amazing movie. This may be a selfish question. I've been gone from South Africa for 47 years, but I'm a keen student still of what's going on in South Africa. Can you talk to us about the anti-Semitism? Because as somebody on the outside, I look at it and it looks terrible. And I think back to when I was born and the years after the Second World War, we had all those mumsers who were Nazis and who were locked up. A lot of people don't know that from the outside world. There was about Brandwag were people who were locked up, and they became our leaders during the apartheid. So now we've got different people who hate us, but they still run the country. Could you talk about that anti-Semitism?
Just to repeat the question, Russell is from South Africa like myself. He says he's been out of the country for 47 years, but he's intrigued by the anti-Semitism coming out of South Africa. He says that during apartheid, the Afrikaners were, I guess, the incarnation of the Nazis, and they were locked up. And when we voted in the blacks during the referendum of 1992, I think it was, the blacks now somehow have become the pro-Hamas party. So it's like, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. The question being posed to Wayne is if he can comment on the anti-Semitism coming from this very unlikely source in South Africa.
I think the first time I voted was when Nelson Mandela came into power, and many people thought there was going to be a bloodbath, but it turned out to be he built the Rainbow Nation. The ANC government then split. You have the commies that are being paid off by Iran, literally, so they're the ones that are running the country right now. And it's a small echelon of people right at the top that have the levers of power and their fingers in everybody's pockets. And then you have the rest of the population. And as the rest of the population go, there's really no anti-Semitism. We don't feel it at all. The people of South Africa still try to strive for the Rainbow Nation. So my wife, she sews, and my daughter sews, and she goes into Shamdoors, which is a Muslim-owned shop, and they come into our shops. There were one or two little protests or whatever, but even at the protest, it was well organized, and the CSO, like the South African Jewish Security Organization, they worked it out with the protesters, and they were like high-fiving the organizers, and then, they were like, river to the sea, kill the Jews, and then they like drove off in their BMWs, and then, so it was like, it was performative, but the people in South Africa really don't buy into that. So, as Chief Rabbi Goldstein says many, many times, the government literally do not represent the will of the people, and so I'm pleased to say that they strive for the Rainbow Nation. And it comes down like they're good people. They want the 10 Commandments, like it's, so, but the ANC, not so much.
Wow, oh, interesting. Anybody else? Questions? Yes, sir. Ed Katz, right.
So, first off, thank you for including Hillel Neward in there, because he's like the only person who calls the UN out on all their anti-Semitism.
UN Watch, right?
Right, exactly. And also, there was, I'm trying to remember, the scene, I think it's in your mom. Oh, all right, well, I'll get to it. There was, this is a little delicate, but my understanding was when Hitler was coming to power, he didn't want to kill all the Jews. He wanted to round them up and contain them, but it was from a practical standpoint, from the Nazis' perspective, it was too expensive, time-consuming, manpower-consuming, and that's why they ended up killing them. That part wasn't presented here, and I guess you were kind of taking a shortcut to the end.
No.
Okay. I'm going to repeat the question. The question from Ed is that his understanding of Hitler's intention was that Hitler wasn't planning to kill the Jews as much as he wanted to just corral them into concentration camps. Yet that somehow, according to his understanding, became too expensive a proposition, and that's why they decided to just annihilate the Jews. So the question is posed to Wayne why that was not represented in the film.
I'm not sure.
I've never heard of that before.
Well, I'm not sure when Hitler got the assignment in his mind of like, I need to decimate the Jews, I need to be like Pharaoh. I'm not sure when he got the actual assignment to murder them. I'm not sure, but there has to be something latent in his soul, in his black soul, that even if it wasn't going to be expedient, there was something where he may not even have known it in the beginning, that that's what he wanted to do. But all we can say is that by the end, it wasn't. I don't think it was expedient to get rid of the Jews because it was, easier than putting them in a ghetto. I'm sure the rabbis taught you. If he hasn't, he will teach you. I'm sure about Purim Fest, Nuremberg trials. You remember the hangs, the Esther thing?
Oh, the 10 sons of Haman?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't think I taught it.
Okay, well, he will teach you. I'm going to just give the short version. That when they hanged the 10 architects at Nuremberg, it was actually, I think Streicher actually killed himself. He hanged himself, and there were 9 that were being hanged. Before they went to their death, I forget who it was. He yelled out "Purim Fest." Purim Fest.
One of the Nazis declared Purim Fest.
The Nazis before he was hanged, he said Purim Fest. So why did I say Purim? It was actually Hoshana Rabbah. It turns out that was the
day after Sukkot.
It's a long story. The Rabbi will give you the share, but they knew that they were Amalek. Purim is the war of Amalek against the Jewish people. They knew that they were continuing the mission of Amalek, and that's why I said Purim Fest.
Fascinating. Larry,
As a Yekka,
a German Jew, a Yekka.
according to my grandparents and parents, it didn't start out with rounding up the Jews. Hitler wanted the Jews to leave the country. That's what he wanted. Now, after Kristallnacht, which was pre-planned and created after someone was killed in Paris by a Jewish person whose father was kidnapped, because what Hitler did first was he got rid of all Jews from the East that were not born in Germany. So the Polish Jews all had to leave. After Kristallnacht, the men were all taken to one of 3 different camps. And to get out, they all had to agree to leave the country. That's what he wanted. How did it get to the point that we talked about? A couple of things happened along the way. First of all, there was an Evian conference, which was, what are we going to do with the Jews? Nobody wanted not one, except the Dominican Republic.
No country wanted the Jews.
No country wanted the Jews except the Dominican Republic.
Larry, just to catch up for the crowd, Larry's saying that as a German Jew, telling me the history, is that initially Hitler wanted to just evict the Jews. And after Kristallnacht, they decided to, 3 things happened. One of them was the Evian conference, where they realized that no nation, no country other than Dominican Republic was willing to accept the Jews. What else?
And there was a meeting in January 1942 in Wannsee.
The Wannsee conference, which was the final solution.
That is where it began in earnest.
So it was an evolving truth. Phyllis.
I think ultimately, while that's all very logical, what it doesn't do is deal with the fact that you can want to get rid of the Jews, you can want to sell them to people, but ultimately the ability to round them up and murder them had to be what you can say that was their point of the original, what the founding of the entire socialist republic was to ultimately kill the Jews. If you could go so quickly from nobody wants them to let them murder men, women, and children, you were already primed to be able to do that. It's who you were, your soul, that allowed you to kill 1.5 million children.
Right, Dennis Prager, may he be well, he made an observation before he fell that what we read in the Haggadah is that in every generation they rise up against us to annihilate us. And he says, no other, other nations have been hated, other minority groups have been hated. The blacks and the gays and the gypsies and the right and the left and the communists and the capitalists, they've been hated. But nobody ever wanted to annihilate them. That's something which is unique, absolutely unique to the way that the Jews have been hated. And I think that for the first time, it's really Wayne Copping's masterful presentation that really puts it in a light that sheds, that it's the existence of the Jew that is causing the haters to see red because of who we are and what we represent. Ellen.
I have a different question. First of all, I think that the film is marvelous, and I hope that it gets a wide distribution because it's important. It seems to me that going back through history, there are two things that all of the enemies have in common. And the first is this enormous ego, where whoever is in charge of the population or the country or whoever the enemy of the Jews is at that time sees themselves as the supreme leader, right? And the other part of it is that that leader then subjugates that entire population. So where the Jews are the people of the book, and for all of the rules and commandments that we have, we prize freedom and freedom of thought and light and all of that, and so we automatically become the enemy because we're a threat to
equality.
all these people. So in 2025, there's a difference, and the difference, I think, is social media and 24-hour news, where we have college campuses filled with populations of kids that don't know any history. How do we deal with that? How do we take a film like this and the education behind it and get to these people who are so easily convinced that they're following false leaders?
Ellen's question is, how can we bring this film to the college campuses, that the children that have no clue where they're coming from or where they're going, they have no idea what they're representing or who they're fighting for, how can we help them understand what this is really all about?
At the roots, it's not easy raising parents. First of all, it has to start in the home. It has to start in the home. I get into so much trouble for saying this, but I've seen this time and time again, that when there are Jews that are anti-Israel with like fire breathing out of their mouth, sometimes it's the propaganda, but sometimes things just aren't great at home. There's something conflicted in their private lives, and this is just manifesting like that. Because a person, a Jew can fight with the Torah, you can fight with Hashem, you can argue, right? But so there's room for all of that, for that discussion. But when you come at it with such a vengeance and a vehemence, something else is going on. So, number one, I think it has to start at home, and we as parents need to take an accounting of where we are holding. That's number one. Number two, who their friends are. And number three is they need to hear other messages. But first they have to be somehow extricated from that. And if you have people in your life that you're close to that are these crazy nut job, fire breathing, invite them for a Shabbos, because then you can just speak about it. And they may have very valid points. So discuss those points. But to completely wipe out the Jewish people and wipe out Israel, on what basis? Comes down to the 10 principles again, and that's not who they really are. So something is getting in the way there. So parents and education.
I want to just give it a slightly different spin on that, and that is, for us, for my wife and I, to raise our children in a place like Palm Beach Gardens, which is a far cry from a very observant Jewish community, is an act of courage. And sometimes we've been asked, how do we muster the strength or the courage to be able to raise our children that we hope to continue our legacy and our values in a place which is so far removed from an insulated Jewish community? And the way we see it is that as long as our children are infused with values, then wherever they are a lighthouse. amongst their peers, amongst their friends, amongst their workplace. It doesn't matter where they are. It's not about the campus. It's not about the workplace. If we can infuse it, just like Wayne says, it starts at home. It starts around the dining room table. It's the stories we share. It's the empathy we convey to each other. When we're able to share these values, values are like coals. They're caught, not taught. And if you're able to share, impart those values onto our children and onto ourselves and onto our peers, then what happens is we create a tidal wave, a ripple effect that spreads beyond and beyond to the point that we are respected for who we are instead of us looking apologetic and pathetic. I'd like to close the evening here tonight by asking our special guest, Wayne, producer and director, to give us a closing comment before we call it a night.
Fourscore and I was just thinking about your question and your question. I was at Duke University last week, and I was asking them about their protests and what the students have gone through, and they were saying it wasn't quite so bad. So I was trying to interrogate why. Why wasn't it so bad? Was it because of the number of students? They do have a lot of Jewish students, but that wasn't why. Turns out, there's a Chabad rabbi on campus, Rabbi Felix. He had a Seder for 300 students. I'm not sure if it was one or two Seders, but at least one Seder. 300 students. I went back to the Chabad house, and I was looking at his wall, these photographs, and they had these kids. There was a protest, stop the genocide, stop the hate, river to the sea, blah, blah, blah. And there was a guy who was like late to fill in, one of the students, like late to fill in the foreground.
On one of the protesters?
No, on himself. When you have strong Jewish students who are doing Jewish things, and incidentally, there were a bunch of students that didn't come to my movie. I walk in, I'm like, why are you here? And they were learning Pirkei Avot, because they had a class. I said, I'm so glad you were here. I'm so glad you didn't come to the movie. When you have strong students, you're going to have weak protests. When you've got weak Jewish students, you're going to have strong protests. That's just a fact of life. And I'll end up with this little story. At the beginning of the war, my wife said to me, please come downstairs. I work upstairs, please come downstairs. The boys from school want to say Tehillim. My one kid, he made like a little Tehillim group. He was 9, and then 10, and there was like 11-year-old. There were a few little kids around.
King David Psalms.
King David Psalms, yeah. So she asked me, say something to the boys. So I'm like, what am I going to say? Because now I have to say something inspiring. What am I going to say to these kids?
And your heart is broken, beginning of the war.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was, but I had to say something that they could relate to and something that even that we all believed. So I explained to them, I said to them like this. There have been over the past decade tens of thousands of rockets that have been lobbed into Israel, even before October 7th. Rockets after rockets after rockets. And statistically, practically zero of those rockets have actually killed Israeli civilians. Practically zero. Statistically zero. We talk about tens of thousands of rockets that have landed in a school when the school were on a field trip, or that landed in a parking lot, or that didn't detonate. If you go, you will see countless stories. So I said, you know what keeps the Jewish people safe? You know what keeps the Israelis safe from all these rockets? Kippat Barzel, Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is what keeps us safe. So I said, I'm very dramatic. Yes, it's the Iron Dome you're thinking about. Yes, that also. But I said, Kippat Barzel. This is a kippah, right? Kippat Barzel. The kippah. This is the Iron Dome. And by that I meant, the Tehillim you are going to say, These are your bombs. These are your rockets, and that's what's going to shoot these things out of the sky. That's what's going to knock these things off their trajectory. The tefillin that you said the gentlemen were putting on, the candles that were being lit. If not those things, then what? If not those things, then what? What could account for these miracles? I think, from what I understand, the currency for a miracle is a mitzvah. And you don't have to be the biggest rabbi and the biggest chassid. You don't have to be running around with bulletproof shaitel. But the small things that we do, and the things that we don't do, like not speaking Lashon Hara, those are the things in my heart, in my kishka, the deepest recesses of my soul. These are the things that I literally believe is what keep us safe. That's Kippat Barzel, the small things that we do, and that's what makes us invincible. And we see the most remarkable thing, where like the hostages, these heroes, these amazing human beings are coming out. They're not coming out bitter. They've been through the 7 rings of Gehenna. They're coming out and they want to keep Shabbos, so they want to light candles. They were singing, they learned how to sing Shalom Aleichem in Arabic. Agam Berger's mother, she wasn't Shomer Shabbos. She asked people, do not release my daughter on Shabbos. Don't release my daughter on Shabbos. I don't want the soldiers to have to profane Shabbos. And if she is released on the Shabbos, then the journalists mustn't take pictures of her. She didn't want them to be Machal Shabbos, to break Shabbos. This is a mother who prays every second of her waking hour to get her daughter back. She says, don't bring my daughter out on a Shabbos. Don't release her on a Shabbos. Can you imagine such a thing? And maybe halakhically, there's a reason, like maybe it's Pekuach Nefesh. Maybe you can't say release her Shabbos because to save a life. She said, don't do that. The daughter was released on a Thursday. When we treat our will like the boss's will, the boss makes his will like our will. So the things that you're all doing in your superstar rabbi, that's what's keeping the Jews safe. And when we do what we're supposed to do, we don't have to worry about our enemies. Hashem takes care of them. Just like the Berlin Wall fell, and just like the Romans and the Greeks and the Hittites and the Jebusites, they're all going to fall down. They're all going to go away. Like we saw Syria, just fell. So we just have to be around long enough to let it fall and just do what we're supposed to do. Zero.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to producer and director Wayne Coffin. God bless you. May you succeed in bringing this message all over the world. Lauren.
I would just
Our sponsor tonight.
Yes, I would just like to thank you so much for the film. For those of you who don't know, I went on the website of Tragic Awakening and I looked on the events page, and his scroll is longer than the rabbi's scroll. This man has brought this film to so many colleges, it's amazing. So I want to thank you for your tireless work, for an amazing film. And by the way, there's a convergence of spirit here because Dr. Professor Irving Berkowitz is going to be speaking here next season. He donated a Torah to this shul. He is just starting tomorrow teaching a 4-week class on the history of the Holocaust at Palm Beach State, where he was the director for 14 years. So I would love to put you together with him so that perhaps you could show the film.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for making tonight happen.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you, Wade, for coming over. And thank you, everybody. Am Yisrael. Chai. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you.